Hello, everyone. Welcome to Slogan's Rock and Metal Extravaganza. We are at part 3 of our fairy tale career of Cinderella, and today we're doing their third album, Heartbreak Station. We have Pete Jones, Danny, Logan, and Ches here. So we're going to let Ches go first because he's only got about half an hour with us today. So, Ches, you want to talk about how you got into Cinderella maybe, or this album, and then go track by track and give it a rating after?
Yeah. Thanks for having me on, guys. Really excited to talk about this. And I guess I got into Cinderella just like everybody else, hearing those songs on the radio.
Okay.
And always really enjoyed them. But I didn't buy their albums initially, just, I was into, buying other stuff at that point. But actually, this album right here was the first Cinderella album that I bought. And I really, really like this album. So I'm really excited and, to come on and talk about it. One of my favorites. So I guess we're going to run down all the songs and just give a quick thought. Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. So the first one, More Things Change. It was a single. I think it reached 41 on the rock radio charts. Great bluesy, melodic, hard rock. It's a great vocal and melody. And I think what you can tell by hearing that's the lead off track, it's quite different from the first two albums. It's a much more raw production. And the album is very rootsy and bluesy and got a Southern rock feel in a lot of parts. And, Tom Kiefer himself has said in interviews that they did go for a much rawer production. And they always, I guess they were lumped into the whole, hair band scene, but they were always much more than. They always had that blues element. And for this album, they really shone, it really shines through on it. And a great lead off track. Not my favorite on the album. Those are coming up, but a very enjoyable one at that. So nice way to kick off the album. Next one, Love's Got Me Doing Time. It's a cool folky guitar riff at the beginning. Another great hook and chorus. And what you start to hear here, you got some horns here. You got sax and trumpet, and you have that on a couple of songs. So again, going back to the blues there, right? And a bit of an influence. And I want to mention this point before I forget. So this album was released in 1990, and it's got the feel and reminds me of another album that was released in 1990, the Black Crowes, Shake Your Moneymaker. So to me, they're kind of like, they're very similar, not exactly the same, but definitely that same kind of vibe going to them.
That bluesy vibe.
Yeah, for sure. And so because when I looked at it, I said, geez, I wonder, it had to be influenced by the Black Crowes. And I looked, well, it was released in the same year. So they were both going for that same thing. And I found that really interesting. But, great vocal by Tom. Tom just shines on this album, I find. Another great track. Next we come to Shelter Me. It was also a single. Now, this one here got to number 5 on the rock radio, but this one also cracked the top 40, if I got my facts right, 36 on Billboard. So that's pretty good, a top 40 hit. Again, more saxophone in this. Very Southern rock feel to this one. You can kind of definitely hear that Rolling Stones vibe, I feel, on that one. No pun intended to Shelter Me, but definitely hear get a Stones vibe on this one also. Again, just another catchy, hooky song. So, three really good ones to start off in a row there. Now we come to the Heartbreak Station. This is the ballad. But this ballad is done differently than the big bombastic ballads of, I guess, bands of their, same league they were in, right? Again, they were lumped into that big hair scene, which I do love a lot of that stuff, but, they were always different from that. And so a much more different ballad than you would be hearing those on the radio at that time. This is actually one of my favorite songs ever. I really love this one. This one, number 10 on rock radio, reached number 44 on the Billboard chart. Surprised this one didn't crack the top 40. But just a great song. And again, to me, Tom's the guy that you can just hear the soulfulness in his voice. And, a really great song. And I feel it should have been a bigger hit for this song, but a great one there, in fact. Sick for the Cure, mid-tempo, another good vocal and melody. Okay, to me, not as strong as the first 4 songs on the album, but decent. And I enjoy it. So, it's very solid going through the first 5 songs there. And just looking at my notes. Now we get some steel guitar again in this next song, One for Rock and Roll, very Southern rock, almost country like, I would say, but that country rock type thing. So again, Kiefer makes it work. I feel that, you know, you can tell his influences, I feel, on this album, and you know, really another really cool song. And again, it just shows you like the different direction that they were going in on this album, and to me, like, it's working. So good one there. But now we're coming up to like the last half of the album, and you've got three of my favorite tracks on the backside of this album. Starting off with Dead Man's Road, moody acoustic, such a cool vocal by Tom. And the song really picks up at about halfway and gets a little bit heavier, but such a cool vocal, and just such an atmospheric, moody type song on this one. And probably, you know, that's a song, unless you have the album, it wasn't played on rock radio, you know, wasn't a single. But these are the things I love about albums, like finding those songs, and it's like, oh my gosh, like how come this one was not a single? You know, how come this one wasn't on the radio? And to me, this is one of them. But we got a few of them on the backside. Excellent song. Mid-tempo one coming up here, Make Your Own Way. Decent song, not one of my favorites, but it's decent, right? It's decent. So, but then we get on to two back-to-back ones that are, to me, are just fantastic. Electric Love. Love the intro on this song. Such a cool guitar riff. Again, Tom singing on that is just fantastic. And again, it was such a deep track, like it's track 9. And to me, like, it's one of the best ones. Again, the back half of this album, like where the singles were on the first half, which is kind of like traditional for, you know, albums of this genre. But the back half is where you got those deep cuts. What a great one there. Number 10, Love Gone Bad. This right here, this might be the one song that might have fit on the previous two albums. Again, not really that same production. It wasn't. But if I were to pick one song that we could tack on to the debut Night Songs, Cold Winter, I would think it's this one, Love Gone Bad. What a great chorus and hook in this one. It's a faster paced song. I think this one could have been a hit. Again, at least if not a rock radio hit. I'm surprised stations didn't pick it up. I'm on the border here of the U.S., and we would listen to the rock stations in Detroit. So a lot of times the ones I was listening to, they would play songs that weren't singles. I mean, they didn't pick up on this one. So to me, though, this was one song, like such a great song, I feel could have possibly fit on the first, second, or even like the last album, Still Climbing. Great song. And, you know, and then Winds of Change. It's just a cool acoustic. It's a soulful ballad. It ends the album, and I think it just ends it perfectly. And I think you kind of see everything. Like, I think, like I said, like I hear the Black Crowes on this album, but it was released in the same year. But definitely, I think both of them were getting the Rolling Stones vibes. You know, like you hear the Rolling Stones, especially. I always forget the name of that album. The double album they made. The black and white cover. I always forget the name of that album. I love it though.
Exile on Main Street.
That's the one. That's the one right there. Great album. I don't know why I love that album, but I always forget the name of it. But I feel that those were kind of like the influence they were going, and you know, kudos to them. Like I think, and this is 1990, so again, like, you know, the whole scene hadn't changed quite yet, so they could have easily gone out and made, like, you know, another big album in the vein of the production that they did in the first two. But then again, I feel Long Cold Winter was different than the debut because, you know, Long Cold Winter, you could really hear their blues influence on there. But again, they could have played the safe way, but they didn't. It still went platinum. The first two were multi-platinum albums, so it still went platinum. So maybe the tides were changing a little bit, but, you know, they weren't afraid to like do kind of what was in their heart at the time. And I give them credit. And again, I really like this album. It is one of my favorite albums. I don't know if it's my favorite Cinderella album. It's definitely up there. It's always between this one and Long Cold Winter for me. But I really like this album. And as for a rating, I'm going to go 9 out of 10 for this one. I play it quite often. I'm not at home right now, so I only brought the CD with me, but
Oh, you brought it with you for this?
I brought it with you. But I like it. I like it so much. I have a triple of this. I have the vinyl.
Oh boy.
I have the
Cassette?
cassette, and I was all ready to bring him, but I was kind of like on the go. But I said I at least got to bring the CD with me. And again, it's such a great album. But I'm going solid 9 out of 10. And
Wow.
yeah, that's how I feel about it. Yeah.
Nice.
Ernesto can sell you his 8-track.
Oh yeah, I love his eight tracks. Seeing those, yeah.
I don't know if they would have had one for that. No, they probably would. 1990. There's no
No.
way.
Yeah. By
Yeah.
90, it was probably about over with.
Be the most rare 8-track in existence. If
Yeah,
that's
for sure.
would have been like a
Awesome.
promo thing that they did or something if they had one. So yeah, that was great. So we're gonna. Was there anything you wanted to plug that you're doing before we lose you, Ches? Is there anything that?
Oh no, I appear in shows from here to here. I appear in Tim's Vinyl Confessions quite a bit. So Tim's a great guy, great channel. So I love when he invites me on the show. So I'm on there from time to time, and you can see me commenting different Facebook groups, showing what I'm spinning, that type of stuff, and Instagram.
Okay.
So, and I'm a fan of. And everybody here, I watch all the shows, and I love it. I usually end up spending money every time I watch a show, and to me, that's the best part, And because I think that's just the sharing of knowledge, and
Yes.
and say, oh, I missed that. Or even like an album that I hear, and Peter, I might be watching a show that you're on, and I know the album really good, but then you make a point about it. And say, I got to go back listen to that track. I never caught that, and just those are such cool things. But yeah, I've spent a bit of money, Peter, on the albums that you've been talking about too. So thank you.
I apologize to you and your wallet. So
no, to me it's all good. I love stuff like that, and fan of Sydney and Logan's show here, and thanks for having me on, guys. And
Went and bought all the music he talked about, right?
yeah, so I love the series. So I can stay on a few minutes longer before I go. I'll know I have to go. I can stay on a few minutes longer. I'd love to hear a little bit. Thanks for letting me go first. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course, man. Perfect.
Yep.
great job.
So we'll take it over to Danny next.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, Ches stole some of my fire there.
Sorry.
I'm glad we're like-minded, my friend. We'll start off with the More Things Change. I put down. It's a great opening track. Lots of energy, great slide in the solo. It's a good rocker, and it has a great chorus. And I'd like to kind of a little bit duplicate what Ches said about the band, about this album. This album, like Ches said, it was they were pretty brave to get away from what was already working. That's a brave move. I mean, you're selling hundreds of thousands of albums with the formula you already know that works, and then you take this move to an album that's not nearly as polished sounding. It doesn't have a I don't even think I heard any reverb, but I'll just say it doesn't have very much, if it has any at all, reverb on it. It's more naked. It's more in your face, and it was a very brave move of these guys. And they did well with it. So I'll go on to the next song. Love's Got Me Doing Time. I put very close to Stevie Wonder's Superstition, the guitar riff. It has that feel. It has basically the same notation. So it's reminiscent. To me, it was reminiscent of the old Aerosmith. The drummer threw in some awesome fills, some really good fills on this tune. Some very nice synchronized sax near the end. I said it's not my favorite Cinderella song, but I liked it a lot. Shelter Me, I put bluesy tune, and I liked it. The women backing vocals not even gave it more legit touch for the genre. When the singer throws the guitar away in the video, the energy picks up and becomes more sassy. The sax solo was surprising, and it's quite good. It fits well. It's a great song. It's a fun song, almost Rolling Stone-ish on steroids. Heartbreak Station. I love the 12-string intro. I think Logan last time picked up on. I love 12-string, a well-recorded 12-string. This exceptionally well-recorded. She took the last train out of my heart. I think we've all been there. I have, I'll tell you. It has a nice string arrangement on, I believe it's keyboards. Nice string arrangement. My first bluesy song by them that I really liked. I really like this song. It's a great song. Sick for the Cure. It's pretty basic R&R chorus. This makes this interesting to me, that the melody and some of the vocal phrasing. Let's see what makes this interesting to me is the melody and the vocal phrasing. Yeah, it's a good party song. That quick, good party song. One for rock and roll. I like this song. It's a little country, had a little country flavored. It breaks up the album too. When you have just repetitive, when you put this on at a party, when that song comes on, I mean, for me, I like a little change here and there. This was a great song to put on this album, and right where they put it too. It's kind of nice to hear almost an unplugged version on this album. So I like it a lot. Dead Man's Road. Now this is where I can really get into slide guitar. The first minute gives that old Mississippi feel. I like the tambourine on the one. I think Pete will understand that really well instead of the two. It gives a good, authentic feel, that Mississippi feel, that backwoods feel. This is a good one from the guys. When the drums come in, it's very reminiscent, to me, very reminiscent of Zepp. Make your own way. Great traveling song. The breakdown is pretty cool. For me, it's a great party song. Kind of a party album for me, very much so. Have a beer in your hand, talking to a girl or your buddies. It's a good party song, party album. Electric Love, great opening with the 12-string. Again, the intro was very Aerosmith-ish for me. They even put the vibro slap. I think Pete would know about that, being a percussionist. They put a vibro slap in there, just like Aerosmith,
This one didn't break.
Pardon? Yeah,
This time it didn't break.
This time it didn't break. Exactly. Thank you, Logan. Very simple riff in the verses, but I like the tune. Very, very cool riff on the guitar during the solo. This is reminiscent of, I said again, very reminiscent of Aerosmith. Great song. This is my favorite on the album so far. Love Gone Bad. There's something about that song that reminds me of Zeppelin. Perhaps Pete could shed a little light on it. I think it's the drum lick, or the drum, something in the drums that remind me of a Zepp song. I said I think it's the drum parts. I can't exactly put my finger on it. Definitely not the vocals or the guitars. not Zepp-esque. It was something in the drumming. I think it's a drum pattern for me that sound Zeppelin-y. I didn't have the time to find the tune, but yeah. Winds of Change. love the beautiful acoustic. Here we go again. The 12-string guitar intro is very well recorded. Nice string part again. That goes very well with the 12-string. I said, I hate to say this, but I wrote the song doesn't go anywhere really for me. It's not my favorite song, but I love the string and the strings and the 12-string guitar. That's really all you needed in this song. So I would give this album a boy. I want to say 8.5, but I think that's a little low considering the risk they took doing it, the way they did it. I'm going to give it a 9. I'm going to give it an extra 0.5 just because of the balls they had to do something different and take the risk of losing audience. I give it a 9. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Great.
Nice.
Two great reviews so far. So we go over to Pete Jones.
Very good. I have a different experience with this group and especially with this record. When I was going to be on for the album that's following, Sydney asked me, he said, well, you want to do a Cinderella one? And I'm like, well, I'm not a Cinderella fan, and I'm not someone who followed the band back in the day. And I was like, well, okay, I will. So I listened through it. I've got my notes. So this is from a first-time listener who is making his first impressions and what it means and how it attached to me. So both Ches and Danny have hit a lot of points, and I'll affirm a lot of them. We start out, and first of all, it's a really good production. The album is heavy. It's not overtly overproduced. Every instrument is clean. It's got its place. The drums sound really good. But I think there's one album we need to talk about that we kind of danced around, perhaps, that plays a big factor here. In September of 1989, Aerosmith released Pump. And I think Pump was an enormous influence on everything that came after it. Heart, everybody. Where's your Pump? Where's your Love in an Elevator? Where's your this? And all the bands that came after, and especially if you were already fans of Aerosmith, have an influence. And I think that is predominant through a lot of these tracks.
Great observation.
And so we're going to open up The More Things Change. Great slide. It's a good rocker. And again, these are my first impressions. I heard the first opening riff, and all I heard was Rock, Rock Till You Drop from Pyromania.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, it's what it is. There's only so many notes in the world. We're not going to slog somebody because something sounds like something else, because we could call out almost anybody. And if you're a classical listener, I could call out all pop artists because every classical artist already did it. The song is really straightforward. Traditional verse, pre-chorus, verse, rinse, repeat, solo, choruses out. You get to a nice solo section, and there's a little slide breakdown. And to me, that's a little bit reminiscent of the breakdown in Draw the Line. And I hear that Aerosmith influence there. When we get to the end, it's kind of a repeated chorus with a fade out. It's kind of just a straightforward rock song. Lots of guests on this album. There's saxophone on here by Jay Davison. And I'll skip that next comment until the very end. I'll leave that to the end. Love's Got Me Doing Time. Kind of a funky opening riff with a wah-wah. Again, traditional verse, chorus. The riff, while you said superstition, and I can hear that, I also heard a little bit of play of funky music.
Okay, got it.
We get the horns added in the second verse, and this is where the Pump influence is coming in for me. And I'm starting to hear it. And the line, "Your love's got me doing time," which was done a cappella, is Steven Tyler to the letter. I can hear Steven doing that easily. There's a nice solo. I like the syncopations in it. There's some good band unisons and some tight, subtle arrangement things that kind of break up the backing track on it, which is, I always loved when bands do that. The horns get busier. You get and the riff changes, and now it becomes very Aerosmith-like to me. And Fred stretches out a little bit here. They do repeat the ending chorus 9 times, which is a lot for me. I'm not a big fan when they repeat that many times, but the extra drum fills and things kind of made it more interesting. Shout out to the Memphis Horns on this.
Yes.
Go do due diligence, folks. Look up the Memphis Horns. They've been on 83 gold and platinum albums. They go way back to the late 50s and the Marqués, and it's all about the stack sound and everything. So go educate yourself on that. It's a big departure from the first 2 records. And, you know, it's interesting because I put down while we were talking, and Chez was kind of hitting it here. Change doesn't happen overnight. And the problem with this era, and I'm going to generalize, but I think for the most part, I'm kind of spot on. When you get lumped into a collective, and that lumping is based on visuals, not auditory, you've got a hard time breaking out of that. And because people aren't listening with their ears, they're listening with their eyes. And if you see the guitar twirling and the big hair and everything else, they're going to say, you're this. You have to put that away. You have to just use your ears and say, what am I hearing? Because this does not sound remotely like their first 2 records. Not in any way whatsoever. And you have to be able to separate it. But from a marketing standpoint, they don't want to, the record label doesn't want to push them too far away from that because it made them a lot of money.
Yes.
So there's always an inherent conflict. You know, Sean Connery moved away from James Bond because he didn't want to be typecast. And you're like, my God, he's making more money than he could ever do. But he's like, I want to do other things. They wanted to do other things. And this is really what they were doing. Again, it's a very well recorded song. Shelter Me, nice acoustic with the lap steel. You know, the tambourine on it is great. We get to the verse, and then the snare comes in second half of the first verse, just only on 2 and 4. And then you add the bass drum to that as you move forward in the chorus. You add the backing singers, which was nice. And then you bring in the full band with saxophone for the second verse. It's got a nice flow to it. It has a nice evolution of instrumentation that causes it to move your interest and keep you moving along with them. Of course, we have to reference the PMRC, right? Because Tipper led the war against the record industry. She said she saw the devil on her MTV. To look in the cabinet, it takes more than a key, just like Jimmy's skeleton in his ministry. Okay, Jimmy Swaggart, for those who don't know, go look it up. Then we've got full-on sax and stuff into the solo section. Get a nice breakdown. I think the piano comes in a little bit late for me. I would have preferred the color of that piano to come in maybe mid-song and help give it kind of a lift in a different tonality. Yeah, it's very Rolling Stones-like. And if we want to be more contemporary, we could say it's more Great White-ish, or even maybe then by proxy, it's maybe more Mott the Hoople-ish. And so we, you know, they're all kind of tied in, but it's definitely got an old school vibe to it. And Heartbreak Station, acoustic, slow ballad. They add the strings. And of course, we have to mention JPJ, right? John Paul Jones, you know, doing the string arrangements on here, not to be overlooked because he's a genius and the secret weapon of Led Zeppelin. And that's coming from a drummer. You know, John is just, you know, I saw the movie on Thursday.
Oh, wow.
And you just cannot overstate how valuable John Paul Jones was and is to everything that he's done. Nice slide solo. The interesting thing is that on these slower ballads, Tom goes back and forth between his vocal styles. When it's a little more gentle and a little more recessed, I don't have as big an issue with it. And again, I'll tie a bow around that at the end. But it's a good track, and it's well constructed and compositionally and executed. So I mean, I'm not going to have too much of a problem with it. Sick for the Cure, holy smokes, honky tonk woman, right? We've got the cowbell and the drum pattern that's just slightly altered, but it's got stones written all over it, right? Verse, chorus, verse, piano in the solo section, another bridge, adding lots of slide, backing vocals, and then we get to a 8-bar solo. We bring the quarter note cowbell in, which is different than the intro, which was syncopated. Mm-hmm. And I like the outro, and that stuff could have been introduced a little bit earlier. I like that. It's Ken Hensley is on it, not very prominent in the mix. I mean, I could have used a little more color from him on his very recognizable organ sound. Mm-hmm. Lots of backing tracks, lots of backing vocals on here. It's just a straightforward song. There's nothing complicated. It doesn't stretch out in any way. It's a traditional song. One for rock and roll, acoustic, heavy pedal steel on here. Like you said, very country vibe. We finally bring in a little bit of electric about midway through. You kind of get it, and this is where you can put the horse before the cart or cart before the horse, however you want to do it. You get a little bit of that living on the edge drum feel, and that was before Aerosmith this time, because they hadn't done that yet, right? That's not on Pump, is it?
Living on the Edge.
No, it's on Get a Grip.
Yeah, so so this came out first. Nice solo, lots of multiple choruses. I said the only thing that would make this even more country is we throw a fiddle in here. And here's what I put. This is just my pet peeve. I hate songs that tell you how important rock and roll is on a song that doesn't rock.
Yeah, I can see
just
that.
Food for thought. Dead Man's Road, more lap steel. It's kind of a windy and spooky, stormy mood. A nice tambourine, kind of a lap, grungy, slow feel. Bass drum comes in with just quarter notes. The full band doesn't come in until to the second verse. Then you get a heavy solo section, and here's where I put down. This has got a very Zeppelin-like kind of motif and a feel to it. It's just the right tempo. It's got enough space that they're not overplaying, and that's a Zeppelin attribute. Where the drums can kind of make up all the openings, but not overplaying, because Bonham never overplayed in the studio. So as crazy as he was live, he was perfection in the studio. He just always played exactly what was needed.
Yep.
And a lot of guitar doubling here. When I heard the doubling of the voice and the guitar, I've got Nobody's Fault But Mine kicking in there.
Nice.
Thank you.
I'm hearing all that.
That's exactly what I was hearing.
Yeah.
I couldn't come up with it. Thank you.
I'm telling you, the last couple minutes of this are by far the most enjoyable of this song. And I really wish there was more of that, because it really got entertaining at the end.
Yep.
And it was starting to stretch out a little bit.
Yep.
And I think it was starting to break a little bit of convention of all of the earlier tunes being maybe constricted compositionally by not having a place for it to go into another place. Make Your Own Way, some more cowbell. It's kind of an AC/DC-like groove in a way. Heavier rock track. Again, we got verse, pre-chorus, chorus, rinse, repeat. You can finally hear Ken's
Organ.
You can't stop rocking unless it's, absolutely. Again, a very Aerosmith kind of solo section on here. I did like the little breakdown, because you can finally hear the organ that's going on. And again, the outro chorus just repeats too many times. I said, but at least this one rocks pretty well, and I enjoyed that. Electric Love, nice kind of picking, arpeggiating, and things that go on in the middle. It's kind of got a Sweet Emotion vibe to it. And here's where I have to address the big thing for me. When I'm listening to the first verse of this, I am cheering in my head and I'm going, Tom, please sing like this through all of this stuff. It's smooth. It's enjoyable. The tonality works for me. And as soon as he hits the next section, it fully gruffs up again, and it ruined the whole feel for me. And I was talking to the guys before, just to my own personal ears, Tom's aggressive side is not something that sits well in my ears. It's just not something I like. Some people like broccoli. I don't. And so it's when he was singing and he was going back and forth, which was almost more frustrating because he'd do it and I go, okay, do some more. And then he'd do a section. I go, and he'd go back to it. I'm like, oh, yes. And I'm like, oh, no, stop. And now he's really starting to taunt me because he's just like reeling me in and then throwing me back out. This has kind of a rock steady Bad Company vibe to it in a way. And man, could I hear Paul Rodgers singing the crap out of it.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, let Paul try this one. You know, there's synth programming in here, but I really can't hear it too well in the mix. It's pretty recessed. This pretty much lives meat and potatoes, bass, drums,
yes,
guitar. You know, but I put down in the bottom, it's the best song so far for me.
Okay.
And I enjoyed that. Love Gone Bad, up-tempo rocker, great. My favorite drum feel of the album so far. And that, of course, you had to prognosticate, and you get your once bitten line in the first chorus, right before the chorus, and you're like, okay, there's the Great White or the Mott Hoople reference or whatever. So it came to fruition anyway. So one of the better tracks. Again, more sax, piano, good solo section. You know, again, I love how all of a sudden I wrote down, where in the world did that ending riff come from? It was a complete anomaly to everything that they had done on that song and the album. And I'm like, oh my God, more of that, please. Because that was just such an incredible earworm that got in there. And I was like, oh, missed opportunities on that one. You needed to, you know, germinate that riff or something and do something with it, because it was really good. But another really great track. You know, Winds of Change. You know, it's an acoustic song. Acoustic song, just guitar. We had strings. I do believe that John Paul also did this one. Yep, he did. You know, the orchestration builds. The vocals just don't work for me. They're too aggressive for the sensitivity of the composition behind it and the backing tracks. It's kind of like laying waste to it, machine gun and everything. It just kind of overkills. But, you know, this one, it leaves the drums out, which I actually am grateful for, because I think it would have been really cheesy. You'd come in with a nice big gated or reverb drum thing on the slow ballad, would have killed it. Mm-hmm. You know, would have just really ruined it. Not particularly my cup of tea as far as the composition, but it was well executed, and I can respect it for what it was trying to do. You know, as an album, there's several things. One, I never really noticed any bass playing that stood out to me. Mm-hmm. It could have been just absolutely anybody on bass. And while there were good licks here and there, none of the guitar solos really stood out to me. And so, you know, it's an album, and these are all just first listen impressions. And, you know, is it something I would revisit? I don't know. I think maybe a couple tracks I might, but when the roadblock is the singer, you have a really tough challenge ahead of you. And again, not being a fan of the earlier material, both vocally and kind of compositionally, I just wasn't a fan of those kinds of songs. You know, I think I'm going to chalk this one up to a really good experience, and one that has expanded my view. And now I can at least say, you know, on this particular album, I have a feel of what it was about, what they were trying to do, and it was executed well. Is like I said, it was well recorded. And I'm not even going to attempt to give it a ranking because I'm certainly not qualified enough in their catalog to even have an idea where it would rank with anything else.
Mm-hmm.
So those are my first impressions of the album.
Great.
All right, perfect.
If I can,
Thanks for listening to it, Peter.
Yep.
Addendum to what Pete was saying. When you listen to those high-pitched screaming vocals, tune after tune after tune after tune, you get ear fatigue. And I agree totally with him. Yeah, that was just my little addendum. He was basically saying, and I think if I understood right, he was getting ear fatigue. Song after song, you get to the slower song, you want to hear something more sensitive, and yeah, I agree with that totally.
Well, he does that a lot on his solo albums. The screaming voice is almost gone somewhat on his solo albums, and he's just singing normally.
And see, that would be something I would be interested in taking a chance on, because there's no question he's talented.
Oh, there's no question.
I mean,
and he's the guitar player too, so
he's got all kinds of feel.
Yeah,
his vocal phrasing and everything is very competent. I have no issue with any of that, and it's not even a range issue because I love singers who sing really high. It's the tonality that sounds like his larynx is about to split open into a banana peel.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's hard for my particular set of ears. Someone else, it may be perfectly fine, and that's 100% valid.
Well, can you imagine Brian Johnson singing a ballad and using that raunchy voice, right? It's kind of the same sort of thing.
Not doing sensitive tunes either.
Yeah, that's
They're
the thing.
all the way through. I mean, if you rock, it's a good
I don't believe AC/DC is going to make the quote mistake and write something and ask Brian to do that.
Yeah,
that's right, and that's why it fits so well. They're just rocking the whole time. I agree with Pete on that. I mean,
you know, there's
you're
not a lot of singers who can spread sensitive and soft as well as full and aggressive. I mean, I mentioned Paul Rogers. Paul is a master at it.
yeah.
Yes.
Paul can woo you.
Yes.
You know, you can do Seagull, and then he can hit you hard over the head.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So those guys are the ones that shine really special, and they're that way for a reason. So
Yeah.
I really appreciate, you know, the opportunity to do it and to listen and step out of a box, because other than for a purpose like this, I wouldn't have given it the time of day. So
yeah, that's true. Yeah, I love his voice too, but because you hear it on some songs, he'll be singing softly, and you know, this guy's got a great, beautiful voice, and then it's okay,
right,
calm down,
guys. I gotta run.
Okay.
Thank you so much. This was great.
No problem.
Great to be with everybody. Danny, great. Pete, Logan, Sydney. Thanks so much. Had a lot of fun, guys. Take care.
Great job.
Take care, brother.
Thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, that's true. Like I get how his voice, that aggressiveness the entire time, can be a little bit fatiguing. I totally get that. But yeah, and I've looked up some recent footage of him. Granted, he's 65 years old. Gone. His voice is cracking. I hate to say, I don't want to throw the guy under the bus, but like, yeah, his voice is.
No, I mean, he sold a lot more albums than I did.
It's like.
Well, it really didn't take too much of a genius to figure out that style of singing was not sustainable. It wasn't healthy.
7 vocal cord surgeries. Like, that's just insane.
Yes.
Yeah.
If eventually it gets all synced. I mean, we talked about that before the show. I mean, that's a delicate instrument. It's not like a 70-year-old guitar you can pick up and it sounds.
Plus the guitar strings. That's okay. I'll replace them.
Yeah, I mean,
right, exactly.
Once that instrument goes, it goes. I mean, once it gets to a certain age, it's done. It's worn out.
So yeah, we'll move on to Logan. Logan.
Alrighty.
There
Yeah.
you go. You're
me like
delayed,
this,
right?
or
You hear us a little bit. Yeah,
am I
you're a little
going,
bit
or
delayed.
what?
I think. Yeah, you're good.
You're on, brother.
You're good.
Is it working?
Yep, you're good.
If it's working, okay.
Yeah.
All right. I wrote down some charts. The album reached number 19 on the Billboard 200 U.S. chart and went platinum in the States in 1991. It went platinum in Canada, gold in Japan and Switzerland, which I thought was kind of odd. But, I guess, certain people like this kind of music in different countries. It just seems like more of a U.S. thing to me. But, maybe I'm wrong. I said there's 3 singles released from the album. I think Ches hit on all of them. Shelter Me being going to I freeze out. Yeah. Uh-oh. Is it working now? Frozen in the long cold winter. I sure am. Okay. Well, I'll talk about the singles here. Like Ches said, the Shelter Me reached the number 36 on the Hot 100. This album's also the first for the band not to feature Andy Johns in production. So this time around, it's John Jansen, who I looked at his credits on Wikipedia. He worked with everyone under the sun. It seems like Blue Oyster Cult, Supertramp, Alice Cooper, Billy Squier, and even Barry Manilow. So European art film. But yeah, he worked with a lot of people. This album has a whole heck of a lot of additional musicians, like Peter Jones mentioned. Some of the most notable for the rock music audience, of course, being John Paul Jones, who arranged strings on 2 tunes, and Ken Hensley played piano on 3 tracks. So the songs started off with the More Things Change. Already introduced to a similar, but to me, very different production style on this album. From those first couple of, damn it, keep freezing up, man. What the heck? All right, okay. Maybe we'll get through this. I don't know. So I'm at this tune sounds way more live in the studio than me than the last 2 albums. Whole album does. Much more natural, I guess, is the word I wrote down. You're doing so good. Love some of Tom's lyrics on this tune. Woke up this morning on the wrong side of the bed. Got this feeling a train running through my head. Going back to the Heartbreak Station line, I guess, there kind of. Pretty much the title speaks for this tune lyrically. I think it has some cool slide. I like the slide guitar breakdown, which Peter mentioned sounds like Draw the Line. I didn't even think about that until he said that. So that's a cool thing he figured out there. I like how they build the slide parts up too in that section, because it starts like how the beginning of the song is, but then they do one section, and then there's another bar, and then there's another section, and they bring the whole thing up for the band to come in again. Song, I wrote down it was released as a single, but it didn't chart, which is kind of crazy to me because they did make a video for it. But we'll go into Love's Got Me Doing Time, which Danny and Peter made great. Didn't even think about that wah guitar riff sounding like anything. I wrote down Trampled Underfoot of Zeppelin, but yeah, definitely Superstition, and I can't remember the tune Peter said, but probably more that kind of feel to it. Love when Tom sings the chorus line, all the instruments stop behind him before that wah guitar comes in again. The horns in the background are starting to show their prominence in this tune, really shining in the background for me. The last minute or so of the song is filled with some nice additional percussion work I heard. Nice solo as the band rides on that chorus, and there's some nice fills from Fred Corey in this section, because of course he actually plays on this album for once. And I wrote down, I'm sure this album turned off some fans of the band with songs like this, but again, I think it just shows their diversity in full force. So we're going to bit from the album. Starts with some acoustic and some slide before Tom's vocal comes in. You know, pretty much how we singing about how we all have to have something in life to enjoy. In our cases here, it's music, obviously. I like the lyrics in this one. You know, as Peter said, referencing for Gore and Jimmy Swaggart. I think Jimmy Swaggart probably had 300 songs wrote about him by this point, but you know, Ozzy Miracle Man and all that kind of thing. Fake Healer, Middle Church, but the song musically really is another blues rocker with some nice saxophone solos and guitar solos, one right after the other. Of course, really has like a gospel kind of feel to it with the backing vocals from the females. The song also has a music video, which is pretty popular for when the album came out. Little Richard's in it, Shelley Duvall, Pamela Anderson, Dweezil Zappa's in it for like a second, and Harry Shearer is in that video too. It's kind of a fun video that pokes fun at televangelists, but it's like save rock and roll kind of instead of, you know, Christianity or religion. Yeah, and I like this tune. It definitely has the Stones feel like we talked about. Deserved to be the big hit off the album. But we'll get into the title track now, Heartbreak Station, which just another classic Kiefer ballad is what I wrote down. This one's acoustic with Tom giving a great emotional vocal with a chorus that just, you know, hits you right where it hurts. It's one of those songs John Paul Jones did string arrangements for. And you can totally tell the second they come in because it has that kind of Zepp feel. I think the last track has a more Zeppelin feel to me. But just a universal message that anyone can get into on this song, Losing a Love. Song also has a great heartbreaking guitar solo, which I think Tom plays on the slide there. Really complements the strings for me with that solo. Tom plays some piano on this tune too, which I forgot about because I know I mentioned last week that Don't Know What You Got was it, but there's some piano on this tune. And I love how with this band, Tom never did a ballad the same way twice. This one being more acoustic and string driven. Just a great song that makes a great title track for this album, I think. We get the Sick for the Cure, which I totally agree with Peter Jones. A total Rolling Stones worship in this tune to me is what I wrote down. Oh, Ernesto, I'm only on track 5. But it's got some great cowbell drum work in the rhythm right off the bat of this song. Of course, this is one of the tunes Ken Hensley's on. And yeah, you can't really tell. He doesn't really make his presence known too much. Probably could have been bumped up a little bit in the mix. Like the slide work on the song. And I kind of find it interesting they named it the song after the bridge section, but they only sing once, not the chorus, because the chorus is, of course, you know, Free Like the Wind and all that. It's a great mid-tempo rocker, and to prove my point about the Stones connection, Tom or Jeff, they play the opening riff to Honky Tonk Woman several times in the song, but probably easiest to hear it towards the end. And I like how it ends, but it comes back into the guys jamming without the drums. I thought that was cool. And then we'll get to track 6, which is One for Rock and Roll, which I do like my rock and roll, L, that's for sure. But One for Rock and Roll, I like this one. It's going to, well, I wrote down, I think this one is going to be maybe the most not like track on this album for a panel, but it did fairly well. I thought people would probably not like it because of that older kind of country vibe it gives. It has some great pedal steel guitar throughout. You know, Tom talking about his life story and, you know, long as I got rock and roll, I'm forever young. That's cool to me. I really like that heavier, it's not heavy, but, you know, kind of a distorted guitar line that comes in after that line, the chorus. Yes, I try to. I wouldn't say I know too much. I'm just trying to catch up with Sydney. But it's got a nice acoustic solo too, which I thought was different. Feel like this song is simple but effective in a way. Just again, to me, the band showing that their diversity on this album. Then we get to Dead Man's Road, which is the big epic and probably one of Cinderella's longest tracks. Song starts with some ambient noises, the wind and all that. Breaks into some slide guitar. We get the main riff of the song back with some kick drum and tambourine. Really like that ambience it gives. Yeah, thank you, DC. We're trying to carry the torch. It's a heavy torch you guys are leaving us, but I'm gonna do my best, and Sydney's gonna do his best. Yeah. But you know, the song amps up with some harmony vocals from the band for the chorus. For the damn it, where's that? I keep looking at the builds up with some harmony vocals from the band for the chorus before breaking into the slide the last time. And then it's got some drum fills, and the song just builds up even more with the band and Tom both singing the verses. Kind of has a great electric blues solo with some great slide guitar backing. Love the feel of this track, really dramatic and epic. And the last chorus also adds some more backing vocals from outside musicians as well. There's some mandolin work in this section at the end. And it's got some great drum fills from Fred Corey in the last minute of the song. Really showing off how good a drummer he is with some string work behind it all, which I'm pretty sure it's string work. Maybe it's keyboards. I'm not sure. It just sounds kind of epic like that. But it's one of my favorites of the album. I really like it. And then we get Make Your Own Way, which is it's got a nice rockin' riff. Some great lyrics on this tune, life kicking you down, but you got to make your own way. I think this song musically shows off some of the band's earlier writing styles. And I know Ches said, I think Love Gone Bad could have been on one of the early albums. I said this one maybe could have fitted on Long Cold Winter, maybe. This one is the song that reminds me most of their writing style. There's a nice breakdown section that the band likes to do with the descending riff that kind of reminds me of Coming Home's ascending riff. It's a fun rocker, but not one of my favorites on here. Then we get to Electric Love, which I love this song. It's got a great melodic guitar intro, which breaks into a great blues groove with some cool backing percussion and nice bass work, which reminds me of Aerosmith on this tune. Total Sweet Emotion, kind of. Tom gives a great vocal on this tune using both the cleaner and grittier vocals. I like the little lead breaks in between the verses that they do. Great chorus on this tune that breaks into a nice instrumental section with a great guitar solo. And they go back into that blues riff at the end. Probably one of my favorites on the album, actually. Love the groove the guys get on this song. And we got Love Gone Bad. So, yes, I know I've ran past my 2 minutes, but we're getting there. We get a more up-tempo rocker in this tune. Another kind of mix of Stones and Aerosmith. Like the backing vocals on the chorus really adds to the song. Song has a great solo. It really gives that mix of faster kind of and bluesier tones. When they played live, I watched the Heartbreak Station from Detroit last night before I went to sleep, and they played that heavier section that Peter Jones was talking about. Kind of did like a jam, but they didn't play the song. They just played that heavier section. So they must have really enjoyed that section. So, and I do too. With the saxophone, and I'm not sure if they ever played the whole song live. I didn't check, but yeah, it's definitely a cool track. I like how it changes there at the end. You don't expect that. And then we get to Winds of Change, not the Scorpions Whistle song. We get to the acoustic ender on the album, and I really enjoy this one. I think a lot of it, to me, kind of how Danny said, it comes from John Paul Jones' string arrangements. His work on the song really brings this song to another level to me. Really reminds me of some of his Mellotron work on the Rain song from Zeppelin. Kind of introspective in the lyrics, talking about life, how it changes. And I like the timpani drums and the combination of the acoustic instruments and the orchestration. Really just builds and builds to me at the end of this track. It probably doesn't really go anywhere musically. That orchestration, man, I could listen to that string work just isolated. It'd be awesome. But overall, this album again shows their diversity in full form, kind of like Long Cold Winter, but probably even more so on this one. This isn't my favorite. I said Long Cold Winter was last week, but I think this is their most consistent one all the way through, with really every track to me fitting in nicely on here. And if I was going to rate it, I'd give it an 8 out of 10. So that's my spiel.
Nice. 8 out of 10. Oh, boy. Making me be the bad guy all the
Yes,
time.
sir. Yes. Give it a 2. Give it a 2.
No, not a 2. Come on. All right. So, yeah, that was good. You were lagging there a bit, but then it started working again. It seems you're good now. So,
yeah, we
so
got it
that's
figured
good.
out, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
No, it's random. Sometimes it's freeze, but now that we're all here and it's working again. So, I don't get it. It's weird. So, yeah.
It's working now.
Yeah, we'll see. So yeah, so we'll get into it. So yeah, the more things change. For me, it's an okay party song. doesn't change much, but sounds like 80s Aerosmith to me. Very influenced by what was going on with Aerosmith in the 80s. It's okay. Love's Got Me Doing Time. See, this I really like. It's a really funky sounding song with like a fun bluesy solo in the middle there. I find it way more enjoyable than the opening track. We get to Shelter Me. I kind of enjoy the video more than the song itself. I don't know. It's fun, upbeat song, but yeah, I love
Video's
music
fun.
video. Yeah, it's just very basic to me. The solo was fun. I think the song itself, that's again with like what Pete says with the repetitive choruses. I find that goes on a little bit too much with these guys. Music's good. It's just the repetition. I would have liked a little bit more guitar after the choruses, and instead of just going or after the solo and then go into change it up a little bit, but just back to chorus and it fades out with the chorus basically. And then yeah, Heartbreak Station. I'm not a big ballad person unless it like kind of changes, and I don't know. For me, his voice is great, but the song itself kind of puts me to sleep. I don't really want to. It's just not for me. Oh, I know. Oh, I thought Pete was gonna be the bad one to this. Oh. And then yeah, Sick for the Cure, another basic blues song with very little changes. Not crazy about this one either.
You're a naughty boy today, Sid.
One for Rock and Roll, an acoustic country song that doesn't appeal to me.
Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah, I knew you wouldn't like that one.
Here though, Dead Man's Road though. It's a bluesy song, but it has a really dark feeling to it with a great heavy solo. That's my favorite on this album by far.
Oh yeah.
Gets stretched out a little too long at the end, but it's kind of cool with his like kind of creepy voice almost in the background. Could have been a little bit shorter. It didn't have to be on stretch out to 6.5 minutes. I don't find, but still a great song. Make Your Own Way, kind of a fun, upbeat AC/DC sort of stylish rocker. A little bit more Aerosmith than AC/DC, but I guess it's probably his voice. But yeah, more Aerosmith than I'd say AC/DC, but nothing special. It's probably my favorite of like the mid-tempo rockers on the album. And Electric Love, okay boogie song with great vocals from Tom as always, but again, drags on for way too long at the end. Then Love Gone Bad, great song, one of the better ones on the album for me. I love the ending. It kind of has like a dark, almost like Sabbath-like sound, but not as heavy. It has that kind of doomy sound at the end of it.
You put some distortion on that, yeah.
Yeah. And then Winds of Change. I'm sorry, very boring ballad that does 0 for me. I find it's a bad way to
0.
I find it's a bad way to close an album. I find if any band says we have this album, the song was called Wind of Change. No.
You'd advise against that.
Yes, I've never heard of Winds of Change. I like Y&T. I'll give Y&T does a great Winds of Change, but that's a whole other. Yeah. So overall, it's an okay album. It's my least favorite in the catalog. The next one's actually my favorite. I give it a 5 just for the songs that I really do like. Pete's like, thanks for saving me. No, you weren't even harsh on it, so no. I hate to rag. I don't want to sit here saying these guys suck. It's not what I'm saying. It's just it's not for me. Oh yeah, but like if you're into like really bluesy, rootsy stuff, then I can see someone giving this a 10 because it's very bluesy and rootsy. I do agree with Danny though, how they did take a good chance.
Yes.
With this,
yes,
I'll give them credit for being risky because if you like those early like glammy kind of things, to come out with an album in this vein was a very risky move, and it did well. So
very risky.
Well, and we didn't talk about it specifically. The obvious big difference is the singles.
Yeah,
there's the difference in the number of sales are singles.
Mm-hmm.
We see this with all the other bands. If we saw it with Van Halen, they get to Women and Children First, and there really isn't a big single per se, and same thing with that Fair Warning era. So everything before it and everything after it sold way more because it had recognizable singles.
Yeah.
So,
oh yeah, like the songs like "Shelter Me," like it was a huge song. You're not going to hear "Dead Man's Road" on the radio. They're not going to play that kind of stuff. Yeah.
I also this, and then that'll be my last comment on the album. I take an artist at their own word, that whatever it is you're going to do in whatever direction you go, that's your artistic choice. I'm not going to question that.
Yeah.
All I'm going to say is whatever stylistic road you go down, just do it well. Just do it well. If you're going to go more country-ish, be more country-ish. But don't do it thinking you're going to play the way you did on your first couple records, because it's just not going to work.
Yeah.
So just be authentic to whatever it is you're trying to do. It's not up for us to question your artistic journey.
Right.
That's your choice. So.
I agree. Totally.
I guess it's probably not fair. I rate this album because it's not really the styles that they went for on this is not really my thing. So it is kind of unfair to give it even a rating. I can see why you didn't want to rate it, but because it's the first time listen. So yeah, for me, it's I shouldn't have probably even rated it because it's really not.
It's not your
type of
thing,
music.
man. It ain't no big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not a big deal. I mean, it's you either like it or you don't. I mean,
you can't like everything. So
no.
Never apologize for your own tastes.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
So let's see.
You did.
Okay, so we'll move into our little Cinderella trivia challenge here, and whoever gets the question right gets to pick the second album we talk about next week before we get into the second album this week. So try to go with something easy. Name any of the guest stars that appeared in the Shelter Me video. Any one of them.
Ooh, something I said.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Something Logan's like, you could hear what I was saying? You could just look this up anyways. So.
Yeah, Wikipedia, people.
Whoever's got the fastest typing is going to get it. For a second, I thought you were going to whistle Winds of Change by Scorpions.
Oh, no, please.
No, Jeopardy's in the public domain. I'm okay there.
Yeah.
Oh,
is it really?
I don't know.
He's a guest on the album, not on the video.
On the album. No, not on the album, DC. On the video itself. Sorry. You were right with Ken Hensley. He did appear on the album. Yeah, no. It was mostly, there you go. And that's perfect because he's on the next episode with us. So he's going to pick something he wants to talk about. So there you go. Little Richard. There you go. That's one. Perfect. So John, what do you want to discuss next week with us?
He should be forced to pick a Little Richard record.
Forced
to pick a Little Richard. Hey, don't laugh. That's some killer crap.
Yeah.
Yes.
People still guessing. Too late. Oh well. Tangier, 4 wins. That's fitting with this style. Okay.
At least you guys know it because I don't.
I don't either. So that'll be perfect.
Cool.
All right.
Yeah. Thanks, John.
Next week will be Tangier 4 wins after the Still Climbing.
Homework.
So, perfect. Homework to do. Perfect. So we're gonna move it over to. Oh boy, who went first last time? Danny or Pete? I can't remember.
Pete did.
Ches did, and then Danny.
Okay. So we'll go
you went last.
Okay, so we'll go over to Pete for Putting It Straight. Since he picked this album, we'll let him start with this.
All right. Pat Travers.
Yep.
Sometime in 1977. It just can't really find a date. If you can find it, fill me in. But it's the second album of 77, so logic would tell you it was somewhere in the second half. Because the previous album, Making Magic, came out also in 77, so that would be sometime early in the year. So this is a very interesting artist. I discovered this in real time, and if Logan wants to pop that back up, It's because of the album cover. I'm
Oh,
like,
yeah, I love the cover.
in an office with a bunch of marshals
It's kind of
blowing
funny. Yeah.
everybody's head off. I'm like, that can't be too bad.
Yeah.
And, you know, when the
Yeah.
destruction is over at the end, I'm like, okay, cool. Let's go ahead and take that home and see what we've got. And this is what unfolded. You know, Pat Travers' catalog is a very sketchy list as a discography per se. There's some misses and then a real hit and then some misses. There's not a lot of consistency and fluency. So, but this one really stands out, which is why I wanted to talk about it today. What have we got here? We've got Pat Travers on guitar, on keyboards, and on vocals. Peter Mars Cowley on bass. And somebody familiar, but many may not know this was actually him, Mr. Nico McBrain on drums. The officially now retired Nico. And this was done on Polydor Records up at Eastern Sound in Toronto. Pat is Canadian. And it was produced by Pat Travers and a gentleman named Dennis McKay. And you're like, who the heck is Dennis McKay? Well, you need to check him out because Dennis McKay started as a T-boy. So you can call that, it's basically a grunt, an errand boy. You make coffees, you clean toilets, you do whatever. But he did that at Trident Studios in London. And the main engineers there were Ken Scott. I mean, you could just stop right there. Bowie, Elton John, Pink Floyd, Jeff Beck, Duran Duran, Supertramp, Kansas, Mahavishnu, Billy Cobham, Stanley Clarke. Right? And Roy Thomas Baker. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Queen, Journey, Cars. And eventually
Basically every band in existence.
he became a tape operator and started to learn under the tutelage of mostly Ken. And his albums sound really great. And he has produced a lot of tremendous records on his own. And so you need to look up his as well. So this album, you know, especially in Pat's catalog, stands out instantly because of the production is really clean on this. It's dry, but it's 77. It's supposed to be dry, but it's very heavy. It's very clean, and it's got what I call a max mix. I've said this on other shows. What's a max mix? It's an album that has no limitations to how loud you can play it except the gear you're playing it on, which means it doesn't break up. Doesn't overly distort. Some albums you can't turn up beyond a certain point because they break up, they break apart. This, you can shake the earth with it and it'll just get bigger and more open and just get even better. So test it out on your neighbors and see if they have a good time. Just let it fly, which means get those earbuds and your stupid thing off your phone and put it in a real system and let it fly. All right, so here we go. We get the opening track, Life in London. Super tight unison punches and this great distorted guitar, these big drum fills from Nico, super great bass playing, and these thick leads and a really kind of a burning up-tempo driving beat. We get right into the verses, you know, Mars underneath is just thundering away, and it's this great vocal from Pat. I think Pat is very underrated as a vocalist. It sounds really great. And then they go into these choruses and they just kind of repeat. And it's not really a chorus. It's kind of like a verse and maybe a pre and then a verse and a pre and a verse. And every time they split, they do these 8 bars of driving backing track with great guitar leads. They add thick. There's a lot of double tracking of harmonies with Pat in this album. Normally double tracking like that bothers me. I don't like it when it's done with Deep Purple on some of their mid-era albums, but here it works in spades for me. His voice works really great that way. Great guitar work, and I love how Nico goes from the hi-hat to the ride, from the hi-hat to the ride, and back and forth to build and bring it back and build and keep bringing it back. They get down and they just get this really cool solo section, and they hit the nice little old school rock and roll triplet turnaround, ba ba da 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 da, and they go into this heavy solo. This is the first time they do 2 8-bar sections. and I'm really going to nerd out here because I may be the only person in the world who even heard it and even cares. Check out the very first 2 beats of the second 8 bars. Nico was on his ride cymbal for the first 8. He goes back to his hi-hat and then quickly jumps back to his ride because this is the first section they do it twice. And I think he goofed up on the arrangement and thought they were going to the next section because all of them were 8s before that. And then they drive out and then they hit this section where he was supposed to go down, and they build and you get this 4-bar thunderous roundhouse, big, massive drum fill from Nico back into the punches of the opening track. And they just drive the guitar. It soars. It's got such great tone. And there's a lot of extra multi-layer guitar parts in here, a lot of rhythm tracks on top of the leads, a lot of dual leads. And I think, oh man, what a flamethrower to start an album off with. And I was just super thrilled to hear that one. And it's one of my favorite Pat Travers tracks. It ain't what it seems. We get this heavy panned guitar riff, more cool, clean drum fills, nice double leads, Nico playing on all quarter notes, and they go into the verses. And here you've got the harmonies right from the start. So you've got the lead and the harmony doubled vocals, and they get this really cool syncopated underneath the riff, and then back into the verses. I love it. And then they go into this super heavy riff section. Nico just kind of holds the fort down while Pat just solos over it, and Mars is just epic on bass here. It's just so great, and the 3 of them together just have such chemistry and symmetry between their playing. They do the chorus, a great turnaround, more heavy riffs, more thunderous kick, drum fills, and they do a beautiful tight unison ending and another really killer track. And I'm like, where has this been? What am I listening to here? Because something's going on here. And then we get to Speakeasy. Big drum fill from Nico, showing his versatility around his newly acquired large drum kit, because he used to play a small kit, and Pat Travers was like, you need a bigger kit. He's like, oh, okay. So I guess he took it to heart, right? Because he never played a small one after that. So he's always had, a huge plethora of tom sounds to choose from, and he's always used them really well. Strong vocal, tight bass playing, really driving drums. And I love how they go back and forth between regular time and then double time, and then go back to regular time. And they've got these really cool patterns they connect the solo sections with. And there's a lot of funk going on here, stuff you wouldn't expect from somebody like Nico if all you knew was him from Maiden. And it's just such tight playing. It's a very short and sweet track. It's not long, 3:18, and some really, really great lead playing from Pat. And he's a big guitar hero in kind of the underground. A lot of musicians will name Kirk Hammett, I know, is a huge fan of Pat Travers. And he's just a guy who doesn't get mentioned. But he's kind of got a really good influence on a lot of players. We get to Running from the Future. We get this really cool fade in in these cool drum fills, and they just drive and they drive. The vocal is a little bit speaky sung, but it's okay. It works for me. And they've just got so many riffs that just kind of show up out of nowhere, and sometimes they'll recapitulate it and do it again, and sometimes it's a one-off. But it always seems to work. And then they go into this extended solo section. And it's just, oh my God, it's so tasty. It's heavy, and it's one of the heaviest riffs on the album. It's chunky. And it's just, they go to the double vocals, and it's done. This one's barely 3.5 minutes. These are just kind of short, sweet punch you right in the mouth and go, okay, here I come again. And I'm liking everything that I'm hearing from vocals, from drums, from bass. Loving You, very heavy organ. Here's where Pat's a competent keyboardist. And one of the reasons why he later on added another guitarist is that he could play more keys. Also fill out some of the bottom end when he, or in this case, later on, Pat Thrall in their heyday, was playing leads, and you could do things, double leads in real time. It's double thick vocals throughout, wicked bass playing on this one. This is kind of a masterclass. I love kind of the sonic palette changes about in a bridge kind of in the middle of it. To me, this is very Max Webster sounding. This sounds Canadian to me.
Sounds Canadian.
It sounds Canadian. It sounds like Max Webster to me.
Really? Yeah.
And I think it's all about the vocals on this track. And Pat delivers. And it's different than the other tracks. And so far, none of them are really, copies of the other. They all have very unique properties and unique composition characteristics, but they all seem to fit thematically and sonically as a collective. That's a pretty good sign of an album, back in the day. And, that's a good way to start off. And of course, we turn over, and what have we got here? Offbeat Ride. And the instrumental and features Tony Carey, Mr. Rainbow from Rising, on Mini Moog, great solo. And to me, it's a great opening vibe, funky with bass playing, great open hi-hat. It's almost like disco. What's underneath is heavy and syncopated, but very funky. I think Nico is kind of killing it here. To me, it's got a Jeff Beck, Jan Hammer kind of feel to it. And of course, that would make perfect sense based on what I'd said about engineer/producer McKay, having produced, underneath. He won a Grammy in 2010 for Best Jazz Album with Stanley Clarke. So he'd worked with Jeff Beck. This was not new territory for him. And so I think he was a perfect fit with the band and what they were trying to do. And they add these cool hand claps, and it's got this upbeat feel. Bass is awesome. You get this really good wailing sax solo, which I think sounds really great. And then Pat takes off, does his best Jeff Beck, a lot of noisy, grinding feedbacks and some great lines and a heavily distorted, great tone on his guitar. I think it sounds really, really great. And again, nothing that sounds like anything else on the record so far. And then we get to Getting Better. Oh, okay. What a riff. What a riff. Super created, almost proggy in elements. It settles into this really funky groove of perfection, I think. And he plays over the top of it, and it's basically like a guitar vocal sing-along because he's singing the riff. Getting better all the time. He's just, and it's so tight. And then the harmonies come in every other line, and I love how that just adds a little thickness. And then they go into this riff, which I think is just menacing. And it's what's so cool is if you listen, it'll go through the first bar, it'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and then it'll do it again every 2 bars. And I'm like, that is so freaking cool. And I'm like, that's way before the movie, folks. And it's a blistering wah-wah solo. Cowley's put on a clinic. Nico is just supporting, and then he flashes when he needs to. I love the ending. It's just so tight, and it's one of those songs that's just. Then they go to this completely different kind of ending riff. They go through the chord changes with it, and then it's got this abrupt ending and just stops. And I'm like, cool. And then we get to the closing track. It's 7:55. This is basically kind of two songs put into one, dedications part 1 and 2. One is this really heavily distorted Hammond, big drum punches, and it just builds what I call this huge landscape of sonics. It's just thick, a wall of sound, and they're just working their way through it. And it's just this great, thick, sustaining guitar with these really tight grooves, dual leads, and a lot of big fills from Nico. And then it kind of slows down and starts to thin out. And then it just becomes, from here to the end, just kind of a very melodic, vocal-driven, kind of a gentle lyric, about dedication and helping me stand and help me get it through. And both hands by your side, loneliness is gone, and it's a beautiful way to kind of end. And the whole band just supports that vocal delivery, and the juxtaposition between part 2 and part 1 is kind of nice. As a collective, makes a really good piece. And what is nice is, from top to bottom, it's got a lot of color. It's got a lot of rhythmic flair to it. Great lead work, really great vocals, really strong recording. And this will always be my favorite Pat Travers record. There's absolutely nothing to skip on here for me. This is my 10 out of 10 for Pat Travers.
Wow.
Ooh,
That's
Nice.
I wanted to give this one a shout. Oh,
Very-
and kudos to, on the last note on dedication, listen to when Pat comes in on his solo. It's very David Gilmour-like. It's very lyric. It's flowing. It's got that beautiful, just enough distortion that Gilmour was so good at getting, just to allow it to sustain and ring for what would seem indefinitely. And he plays some really, really, really tasty stuff. So that's my thoughts on Putting It Straight.
Nice piece.
Perfect.
very nice.
All right, we're gonna go putting it straight over to Danny now.
Okay. Well, you articulated that very well. I bet you've listened to that album 1,000 times, haven't you?
Yeah, I have.
It shows.
Is like my second or third time ever.
Excellent.
Yeah. So, all right, let's start it off here. Life in London. Man, there's a couple times just so reminiscent to me that Pat, the way Pat's vocals were recorded and the timbre of his voice, he reminded me a lot of Rod Evans, Mach 1, Deep Purple,
Yeah.
Mach.
Sure.
And sometimes when he put his growl in the voice, sounded a little bit reminiscent of Johnny Winters, a little bit. He had that, he has that Johnny Winters.
I think Pat would take that as a compliment.
Well, that was my first take on that song. I thought, geez, man, I mean, voices are so unique, but this sounds awful familiar, And I don't mean that as a slag. I mean that as I don't know if I've ever witnessed two voices that sound so similar. So perhaps it might be the effect, or just the doubling, or it just sounded so much like Rod Evans. So, song, I can't wait. What does it say? I ain't what it seems. Sorry, I don't have my glasses on. I love the syncopated part, roughly at 30 seconds in this song. I love it. I loved it. Absolutely loved it. What's going on between the guitar and drums. I loved it. Another very cool part around 154 that they break into. I love that too. The song was a little bit, I don't know, kind of fragmented for me, but all the parts were really cool. So it was hard for me to express how I feel about the song other than there were some great parts in it all the way through. Just great parts. Speakeasy. I put this is a great song. This is a real butt kicker. This song is great for concerts. Great. This must have you seen Pat Travers live?
I never saw him. Mm-mm.
Oh man, I bet you that song went over big time. At least in my opinion, I thought it was a great live tune. Running for the Future. Once again, Pat's singing reminds me a lot of Rod Evans. This is just this is a great song for the album. This is a great song on the album. Loving You. This is the most commercial song of the album so far. It's a great simple song. Yeah, it's kind of a break. It kind of breaks up what was going on in the beginning and what ends up being in the middle of the end. So I thought it broke up the album pretty good. Offbeat Ride. Whoa, I put this as my favorite so far. I absolutely love the intro. Nice guitar harmonies in the intro also. Very nice guitar song on this song. Guitar sound on this song. This was Ken Hensley, wasn't it, on keyboards? Is that correct?
No,
No.
he's not on this.
No, that was on Cinderella.
Oh, this is
Pat actually plays the keyboards on that.
This is almost the jazz fusion instrumental. I should have put that in my notes. I didn't, but I remember it now. This was definitely by far my favorite song on the album. I love this song. The keyboard solo was great. That was what's his
Tony
name?
Carey.
Tony Carey.
Well, I don't think he was on Offbeat Ride though, was I? I think Pat played the Offbeat Ride solo. I don't know. Wikipedia says Tony Carey was on another song.
Okay. Well, whoever.
Well, that's the one at Wikipedia says he's on Offbeat Ride. I don't know. I'm just saying. Well, Tony Carey. It says Tony Carey's on Offbeat Ride.
Listen to that solo and tone, and listen to the beginning of Terror Woman, and you're like, that's Tony.
I wrote that down in my notes, Peter.
I agree with you. Yeah. So anyway, whoever did it, we think it's Tony. It was great. And then you got that sax solo in there. That's great. And as Pete mentioned, in the end, Pat takes his turn, and the sound is fat. He's using an octave. It's not a splitter. I don't exactly. It was called a blue box in the day. Blue box you can add a harmony, not a harmony. You can add an octave below, and even have like an octave above. And he's using an octave box, and it's fat, it's funky, I think it's one of his better solos. I really like it a lot. This has Jeff Beck written all over it.
It does.
It really does. It's Jeff Beck's early jazz fusion, and I mean, what can you say? It's a great song. My all-time favorite song on that album. I love it. Getting Better. I said this song breaks into something very funky, and I love that. The guitar and bass lines are reminiscent of early Aerosmith. Nice solo, the wah-wah, to go with what Pete said. Pete's blistering solo. It's a great solo. I'm a guitar player, so if I say I like the solo, it was good. It was a great solo, yeah. And he makes the wah-wah talk. A lot of people just go wah, 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 wah,
Right.
and it's boring as hell. He makes it talk. So great job on that solo. Dedication Part 1 and 2. Nice sassy guitar riff and arrangement that breaks into a kind of a bluesy section. We're talking about Part 2 at the end. I love the first half of this song. I love it. So sorry that it's so short, but kind of like you doing Cinderella. it's hard for me to be that expressive with something that I don't have that much familiarity with.
Yeah.
But I rate this album a good, I'd say an 8, and yeah, I would say a good strong 8 on this album from me. I would rate this.
Excellent.
Nice, Dan.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, good review so far. So we're gonna go over to Logan now.
Cool.
Let's
All
get
right.
the dictionary, Logan. Come on, give us the dictionary.
I didn't go too much in detail here with this one. There's not a lot of info about it really that I could find.
No, there's not.
Yeah. I don't really think I believe Wikipedia. It says it reached number 70 on Billboard's pop album charts. I mean, maybe. It just seems kind of odd to me that this would be on a pop chart, but maybe, I guess. I don't know. Of course, I mentioned all the members like Peter did, so I won't do that again. I want to mention Scott Gorham's on Speakeasy, too, from
Yes.
Thin Lizzy. So,
Yep.
Yeah.
I missed. He's on my notes there.
Yep.
Uh-oh.
Yep. So I get into the songs
There we go.
here.
Cut us off. Just put Logan on.
Yeah.
If I don't freeze up, I think I'm freezing up. Alrighty. Still froze. There it goes. Okay. All right. So Logan show again. All right. We'll get to Life in London here. Right out of the gate of this album, you get a killer stop-start riff and a great lead break from Pat. Bluesy vocals following the song breaks. It's getting better all the time. Dig on that one, Tommy Bolin fans. It's got a great lead break. Pat showing off his great pentatonic style licks. Love when the song really opens up with those power chords before the solo. Love the ending too. I think Nico really gets to shine with some killer drum fills before the track goes back into the main riff. I think it's just a track just brimming with energy and a great introduction to this album. Probably my favorite tune on this album too. I really like this one. It Ain't What It Seems is the next track. I love the way this track starts with those double track guitars. And I didn't listen to this one with my headphones like I usually do, so I can't really talk about that. I'm sure it does the same thing, but I wrote down it kind of reminds me of Zeppelin, how they used to do that. One would go through either channel. Syncopation between the band on this track is on fire, especially that second section with the riff that Pat follows vocally. He likes to do that a lot on this album. I know it's probably on a lot of his albums, but since listening to this one, he likes to follow the riff with his vocal line. Kind of goes together. And breaks into a kind of funky groove. Plenty of scratch, like palm muted chicka chicka sounds, like what Peter Jones is talking about a little bit. And I like how the drums complement that. They do the same noise. Solo on the song is very emotive and filled with feel. Every note Pat plays, you feel it, Love how this track ends as well with the band all playing together. It's another cool track. And then we'll get to Speakeasy here. This is another hard rocker, more in the blues structure. Some great guitar sections that, like I said, Scott Gorham plays on this track. Having Scott and Pat trading off licks, it's pretty awesome. I hear a lot of Thin Lizzy, too, in this kind of the unison leads and the solo. Really like how this track is always changing riffs. It never really stays the same throughout. And I think Danny did say this one, that probably would be a great live, great live song. Pretty cool songwriting from the guys on this tune. And then we get to Running from the Future. Song kind of has a darker feel than the other three from the start of the side. Pat giving some cool lyrics, about the kind of future, which is a different kind of lyric from him, especially up to this point. Love the break in the song with Cowling really getting to show off some fantastic bass playing in between Pat's like hanging atmospheric guitar chords. And then, Pat finally turns up the action, gives yet another great solo. It sounds like he double tracked a couple parts as well towards the end of the solo. Really like the short, heavy riff after the solo as well. I think that part could have been used a little bit more on this tune. But yeah, great solid rocker. And then we get to Loving You, which is completely 180 from the rest of the side. I think Pat's playing keyboards on this one, I believe, too. really drives the song at the start. It's got some nice vocal harmonies as well in the song, which clashes into some chord changes for the chorus section of the song. I think the rhythm section's really tight here. Really holds everything together for a song like this. I mentioned too, Pat mentioned Susie in the song, maybe rock and roll Susie for Making Magic. I don't know. Song ends with some great guitar lines, drawing the vocal into a long, drawn out keyboard note to fade. I like that the band did a different styled song for them, and I think the results are well played. I think if they would have pushed a single, because I don't think they released any singles from this, I could have seen this one being the one they would have tried to pull out. And we flipped the record over for I'll Beat Ride. Song title pretty much speaks for the song itself here. Great drum groove on this tune, and Pat's got some great double track lines. A little bit of saxophone in this tune by Bert Hermiston. He returns for dedication too. Tony Carey, of course, gives a great solo, and like we just talked about, even if you wouldn't have told me it was him, I think he just has that certain style, like the Star Tear Up Woman, like I wrote down, just shows up, throughout his career. His indistinguishable sound kind of shows up here to me. There's a nice saxophone solo, which breaks into an amazing Travers guitar solo. This song is just filled with solos. Just awesome. Love Cowling's phase bass tones on this tune as well. It's like phaser bass kind of. Tune's kind of different for Travers, but I like how it shows the different musical styles he's willing to go into. And then we'll get to Getting Better, because you have to say it like that. This tune forever immortalized on the live album, Go For What You Know. The studio version is just as great. Love that stop-start riff that just grooves perfectly with the bass and drums in this tune. A little bit of a funk feel, I'd say. Pat gives a great vocal on this track, and I love that break before the solo with the return of the palm muted scratches, like I was talking about, if it ain't what it seems. It's got another great solo from Travers that breaks into a great chorus part. Again, having the guitar lines follow the vocal. Then there's another new section with follows after a verse. Some very prominent bass lines and high guitar notes from Travers. Love this rhythm section of Cowling and McBrain, and it's kind of a shame they never worked together again, I don't think, after this record, because they just did the two with Pat, I believe. Then we get to dedication parts 1 and 2, which dedication is split into 2 parts. The first part being a keyboard-driven rocker, some nice drum work from Nico, really driving the song with his drum work. Great unison bass and guitar lines in this first part. I think the first part is more of a vehicle for the rhythm section to really shine, especially the first couple minutes before Pat breaks into a cool keyboard solo, really showing off his skills as a keyboardist too. Kind of guitars in the background mainly for this first track, using it as an accompanying instrument kind of. For the big ending with the great drum fill and swirling keyboard, breaks us, into that guitar solo that starts off the second half of dedication with, just a great emotional solo. Like Peter said, just really very David Gilmour-like, tone, feel, everything about it. Love the lyrics to this song. Pat giving his gratitude to the people who kind of helped him get where he is at this time. And I think it's like a universal message he's trying to get across here that we're still trying to figure out even in 2025. There's another great sax solo from Bert that comes in. Some nice backing vocal oohs and ahs, accompanying it nicely before it breaks into another great Travers solo. Really like the ending of this song. Rides on that groove with some cool backing saxophone and great guitar work from Pat throughout the ending. Yeah. Sydney talked about Foghat there. I could have seen Pat Travers with Foghat a couple years ago, but I didn't go. So, but I'll get back to dedication. The great last line of "They keep saying everybody understand" in the background and to the instruments as they bring the song to a proper ending, really, with the keyboard fading out. Yeah, I just think it's cool, man. Plenty of saxophone and guitars kind of trading off at the end. It's a great way to end the album. And I wrote down, so overall, this is actually the second Travers album I ever heard. I know I picked up Crash and Burn first, but I like how, I guess diversity is the word here for me today, because this one has kind of a diversity feel. Great heavy rockers like Life in London and Getting Better are probably my favorites. But I think there's plenty to enjoy on the other tracks. I mean, about every track, Speakeasy, Running from the Future, all the heavy tracks, and even Loving You is good for what it is. I mean, yeah, I don't know if I'd agree with Peter that's my favorite, but it's just hard. Them first 4 or 5 that Pat did, and I'm going to be honest here, those are the ones I know. But it is probably one of my favorites out of those. And I gave it 8.5 out of 10. So that's what I got to say about Mr. Travers.
Nice. Perfect. Yeah, you got to go for what you know. Come on.
No, I love that album.
Yeah.
I think that crashed and burned.
Yeah. Oh, God. We're going to catch some heat in the street for this.
It's better than snorting whiskey.
Or drinking cocaine. Oh, how many? This show's turned into an offbeat ride.
Yeah, but it ain't what it seems.
Speak easy now. Oh, my God. Here we go. Endless.
My kids are stabbing me from afar.
Oh, dad jokes galore. All right. It's okay. I'm sure they're still loving you.
Yeah, you're just running from the future. Be
Getting
careful.
better.
That's right.
I think we used up every song. No.
That's right.
All right. It's all right. So yeah, starts off here with Life in London. Fast, hard driving rock song that just doesn't let up. It's a perfect album opener. It kind of reminds me of Power of Rock and Roll era Frank Marino.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Good
He's got a
choice.
similar voice to Frank too. That's the voice comparison I kind of make, and they're both Canadian. One's French Canadian, so they don't really have the same voice. But yeah, like similar singing voice wise, yeah, they're very similar. I love the song.
Yeah.
And I love how the song changes a little bit near the end with this other riff, and then before going back into the main riff. So yeah, that's a perfect album opener. When I heard that, I'm like, okay. And then yeah, ain't what it seems. Kind of a radio friendly song that still rocks. Should have been a hit to me. Because that chorus alone should have had like radio stations all over it. And then yeah, I love the mix of kind of an accessible sound a little bit with the gritty blues rock. I think yeah, Pat's great on this. I love how Nico's is it Nick? I've always said Nico, but I guess it's Nico.
Nico.
Nico's
yeah.
drumming picks up at the end, which complements Pat's playing, and it's almost the kind of style you would hear him do with Maiden because it picks up at the end. It's just crazy to me that he went from this to Maiden. Started off with the whole blues rock thing, and then how he got picked up for Maiden is interesting.
Yeah, he went to Trust.
Yeah, that's right. He was in that French band.
And that's when he met the guys because they opened
Right.
for him on one of the tours.
Oh, okay. And then, yeah, we get to Speakeasy. It's 3 for 3 so far with this song now. Just a good, heavy boogie rocker with tons of great soloing. And, yeah, great rhythm section. It's just on this entire album anyways. But, yeah, so far it's just a great opening 3 tracks here. And then, yeah, Running from the Future, another amazing song. Starts off as kind of like another boogie song, but then changes into this kind of slow part. Some great bass playing that stands out for kicking into this nasty, heavy solo by Pat. He's a pretty good guitar player, and it kind of reminds me a little bit of Johnny the Fox era Thin Lizzy with the guitar on here. Just in general, which is funny because Scott Gorham played on another song, was on Speakeasy, but yeah, just the whole album kind of generally has that little Thin Lizzy dual guitar vibe with it.
Okay.
And then Lovin' You, this for me is that low point, if you can call it a low point. For me, it's just kind of like this really poppy kind of ballad sort of thing. It sticks out a lot on this album for me. Give him credit for trying to do something different. It just doesn't really work for me on the album. But then we get to Offbeat Ride, which is like a great funky instrumental song, and I even love the sax solo. Again, ends on like kind of like a Frank Marino style solo at the end. Just great fun song. And then, yeah, Getting Better. That title, just saying it is fun. But yeah, another funk style song, but with vocals this time. It's not an instrumental. And then Pat turning into Frank Marino again. A little bit of Hendrix on there as well. Just a fun song with fantastic playing by everyone involved. just yeah, and I think this was one of the bigger. Well, it wasn't really a hit, but it's one of the more live staples for him. It's on the live album, so
Yep.
So yeah, that was the big live song from this. A lot of his songs he never got airplay, but some of these songs would always make it up on the live albums and became live performances. And then yeah, I get to dedication song. It's a weird song, but it somehow works. And yes, this was the song I was thinking. I was mixing this up with Offbeat Ride. Tony Carey's on Offbeat Ride, and then Pat's playing the keyboards on Dedication Song, which is still great keyboard work on here too. I was unaware that Pat even played keyboards. So then I'm looking at Wikipedia and I'm saying, wait, I'm like, who's doing the keyboards on this? And I realized it was him. I thought that was fantastic. I knew he sang and played guitar. I had no idea he played keyboard. And it's not just generic keyboard playing either. It's pretty good stuff. So yeah, he's got some great keyboard playing on this. And yeah, but it sounds like he's been playing for years. And I don't mind the sax solo. It works well with the song and it flows really well into like the short bluesy guitar solo. And I think it's a great way to end the album too. It's just this weird song with like two parts, but they're just basically jamming throughout. It's just a great song. So yeah, overall, I find it's a great album from start to finish, with kind of that one exception in the middle. But even still with that, I'd go 9.5.
Ooh, good one.
Excellent.
Yeah, so it's a great album to me.
Can I, Logan, would you happen to know, or Pete, how many units has Pat Travers sold in his lifetime? Does anybody know?
I'd have to look here. No, yeah, there ain't much out there.
He made most of his money touring. He was more of just a live act than an album sale kind of guy.
He had 20 something albums.
I think it's like 24.
24, yeah.
There's like all these live albums and stuff and compilations and stuff.
That's amazing.
And he's still touring.
That's amazing.
And he's got Jaco Pastorius' nephew in his band.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It's crazy.
Well, and like I said, we were talking before we started on air. I mean, he's had every who's who of great rock drummers played for him.
Yeah.
You know, he went from this to Tommy Aldridge. And Tommy Aldridge is Sandy Gennaro, who's a great drummer. He's had Carmine. I mean, because it's fun music to play, but what I love about this album specifically is that, one, I love that it shows the versatility of Nico, that, and look, Maiden is what Maiden is, and it calls for what it calls for. But you would never, if you had never heard anything beforehand, you'd never presume that he could lay pockets down like this.
Yes, not in a million years. No way.
And
you're right.
Maiden doesn't need him to.
No.
So that's not why he's there. Mm-hmm. And so it's also a great, there's overdubs and there's multi-tracking and everything, but even most of the time in later years, even though we had Pat and Tommy on Crash and Burn, which of course Snortin' Whiskey is the big song, that and the live version of Boom Boom, which is on the debut, which is to me unlistenable on the studio version. It's hideous. It's some of the worst production I've ever heard on any debut record. But live, and also when you listen to, and I didn't fully look up set list, but I know Life in London has had a long extended life live. He plays that a lot. And he's pulled tracks from this in and out.
Yeah.
That he likes to play. But basically, for the most part of his career, he's gone back to the trio.
Uh-huh.
And he sticks with that trio because there are no other guitar players in his way, which is, kind of how those guys like to roll. Frank Marino didn't want another one. Travers certainly didn't want another one. Guys like that who should just not have another guitar player in their way. Blackmore, we've talked about, those guys.
A lot more fun when you do it yourself. You have
Well, yeah.
all the open palette you want to fill with whatever you want. So with two guitars, it gets not messy, but have to really has to be more planned.
It can get competitive, right? Almost sometimes.
Yeah, I guess.
Well, and it's interesting because Heat in the Street is very different from this. And you would never confuse Tommy with Nico. I mean, they couldn't play more differently. I mean, everything is different. You know, Tommy is a low end, double bass as much as he can kind of guy. Nico flies above the top of everything. A lot more faster, intricate ride patterns. Totally different tonality. You know, and then you get this little mini EP, but then you get the live one in '79, which was big, and then Crash and Burn. But it wasn't until Crash and Burn that Dennis McKay came back to help produce. And that's why I think that one sounds better than the other studio records since putting it straight. And then he stayed for a couple records after that. But by that point, he was getting dropped by his label, and you know, because he had no sales or any commerciality to his songs at all. And I'm not gonna say he didn't care. I'm not gonna surmise that for him. But he played what he played. He wrote what he wrote, and he liked what he liked. And you never saw him compromise one way or the other. He's like, "This is what I play."
I don't know if you can read that or if it's backwards.
There you go.
Yeah, actually saw him in 2006. My dad took me to go see him. I think it was for my birthday because it says October 13th. My birthday was October 1st, so it was probably like a late birthday kind of.
Yeah, mine's the 12th.
Oh, cool. And it was at it was Pat Travers and this guy opening up. He's a Canadian guitar player. He was only 14 at the time.
Holy mackerel. And
it was the same style of music. The band was called Mulholland Drive. I think, what's his first name?
Was that at Jeff Healy's place?
Yep, it was at Jeff Healy's place. Jeff Healy owned this bar, and that's where we went and saw him. Small. I basically could have grabbed Pat's guitar out of his hand. I was that close.
Right. Who was with him?
I don't know the other musicians. He had another guitar player with him.
Okay.
And it's funny, the other guitar player was handling most of the leads that night.
He goes back and forth.
So the other guitar player he had with him was phenomenal. I'm like, who is this guy? Don't know him, but he was phenomenal. And even the bass player was like one of the best live bass players I've ever seen. Like the guy was just going nuts.
Well, if you follow Mars, you better be good.
Yeah. This was in 2006. I don't know
who
we had.
Anybody who follows along the lineage better be able to play.
Yeah.
Because he set the bar pretty darn high.
And we were talking to him a little bit before the show because he was kind of like standing on stage, like tuning his bass. So I was like right by the bass player the whole night. So
I mean, he's played with Dave LaRue. He's played with all kinds of people. So I mean, he's always had great musicians.
Oh yeah. I was talking to the bass player and I said like how long you been asking him like how long you been in Pat's band and stuff. And I think he said like recently he said he was just in Molly Hatchet, so it's kind of been around. So yeah.
Yeah.
They were great live.
All Road Dog.
And in 2006, like Pat's voice was still really a shit. Like it was a great show. Like it was really high energy. And like I said, this guy, I think it's Todd Mulholland, I think was his first name. He opened up the show and he had CDs. He was giving them out. He wasn't even selling them at the show. He was just handing his band CDs out for free. It was some 14-year-old kid playing like this blues rock stuff. It was just like, wow. So it was interesting. But yeah, it was a good show. And of course, there was lots of people smoking pot at the show. And Pat goes, it must be that Toronto skunk problem that we're having. Oh yeah, sure, Pat. Skunk.
But, I mean, I don't believe he has any commerciality beyond Crash and Burn.
No.
And
that's not very commercial. None of the music was really commercial, but
80. That was a long time ago.
Yeah.
But people still see him live. He plays the places he plays.
Yeah.
He's working.
Oh yeah, and it's not a huge place, but yeah, it was cool. Like right at the stage, like I could have just walked onto the stage. It was one of those like flat things where you just walk right out onto it.
Wow.
Well, I think, and Danny will concur, I'm sure. There are certain musicians who are made for certain kinds of aspects of the music industry.
Yes.
This is a guy who just has to play live because that's who he is, and that's what sustains him, and that's what keeps him going. And as long as he can play in front of people, he's good.
It was a great, fun show. Like, it was a really good show.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Those songs come off so well live. I can't remember the set list at all, but yeah. I'm not sure if he played anything off this album, probably, but yeah.
Well, the people that are like that, Pete, and I know you will totally agree. Probably everybody will. If you have somebody that loves to play live, you're going to see somebody that puts on a show.
Right.
Absolutely puts on a show.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and I think we can use putting show in quotes because there's an authenticity to them.
Yes,
they're not trying to put on a show.
No.
Yeah.
Their natural love and enthusiasm for what they do is infectious.
Yeah, that's very well put.
I mean,
there's no fireworks or any crazy pyro. Nothing.
You talked about Frank Marino.
Yeah.
Oh my God! Anytime you would see, you'd just be like, "Whoa!"
Yeah.
It was just addictive because you could just feel it.
Yes.
There was nothing else that needed to be done. It was just an energy.
Yes.
That came off that was so palpable, and that everybody's just bathing in it because it comes from a different place.
Absolutely.
It's not from a commercial. I'm not there to sell you something. I'm not there to,
Yes.
Those kind of musicians are going to please themselves first.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're going to go, if you want to join me, cool.
Yeah.
Now,
basically,
the more the better. But if there's nobody in here, I still have to play.
Right.
Because I don't know. And
I love.
I can't be anything else.
Absolutely. This is what I love.
Pat seems like the kind of person there could be 5 people there and he would still perform.
Oh, look,
he was enjoying it. It wasn't like a huge crowd or anything by any means. It was a decent size. Like, he's not playing a big arena. But
and we've all heard stories, both positive and negative, about high profile artists who get to a tour that's not doing so great or something. I mean, right over here on the wall, right there where my finger is, that little black and white thing right there, that's Rainbow.
There you go. That's exactly what I was thinking.
May 8th, 1982, on the Straight Between the Eyes tour in Decatur, Illinois, dead center, cornfield town in the middle of Illinois. Crocus was supposed to open, and the connection was I went to Millikan University in Decatur, and the drummer for Crocus at the time was Jeff Clavin, who was an American. His father was the art director at the university.
Huh.
So we were like, oh, local boy plays with Crocus, opening for Rainbow. Now, this is a small civic center. It's a hockey rink. Small place. You pull the stands out from the wall, push them back in, whatever. And me and my roommate said, oh, yeah, okay, yeah, we're definitely going to go see Crocus because it was right around Headhunter or something or whatever. And you're like, fuck, these guys are killing. And we love Straight Between the Eyes. We were huge Rainbow fans. And we get there, and there's like 2 rows of bleachers pulled out. The rest is empty. If you were Paul Stanley throwing a pick, you'd probably throw it over the last row of the main floor.
Wow.
Literally nobody there. Crocus canceled. So there was some unknown local band opening up. And I told my friend, Blackmore's going to play 2 songs and he's going to split. Or he's just going to sit behind his amps and pout the whole damn time.
Yeah.
And you know what? To his credit, they played a full set. Like, that place was packed. And I was really surprised. So once it started, we're like, let's just move up.
Yeah. They're not going to tell you to get back.
Let's just kind of compact us a little bit. And we had like a small private.
It was like your own show that they put on for you.
Yeah. And some other artists, you do that and they just would just be like screw this.
Yeah.
We'll just take the loss. It's not even worth me getting sweaty, And so I was surprised because I thought Black Ease was going to pull up.
Absolutely. With Richie, you never know.
And
He must have been in a good mood that night.
and he played his ass off. And
Yeah.
I still haven't seen this date show up on set list.
Wow.
And I don't know if it was, I don't know how they got roped into it, because they certainly could play Springfield, the capital, and play the Prairie Convention Center.
Because they were still pretty popular at the time.
Straight
right?
Between the Eyes was a big enough tour. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's strange.
But yeah, I mean, you get artists like this who they're not going to light anybody on fire album sales wise. You're not going to see a big amount of total album sales. They had a tiny little movement where people go, oh, I remember Pat
And there's
Travers.
a few people. There's quite a few that are like
I mean, you couldn't, I graduated high school in 81. You couldn't be in my high school class and not know Boom Boom Out Goes the Lights.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you just...
Yeah, you didn't exist on Earth if you didn't hear that.
No, it was everywhere.
That's absolutely.
Everywhere.
No, it's not even his song, is it? It was an old blues song, right?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he did well. Very well.
Yeah. And so, I mean, there's some good there's a good live footage of the Putting It Straight tour with Nico and Mars. That's fun to watch. I mean, Nico looks like he weighs about 75 pounds wet.
He was, yeah.
Yeah, he was
young. I think he was like 24, 25.
He was a rail, but he's already got his stuff way up high and you can barely see him. And, but he's flying along.
Oh yeah.
And you're just like, so, I mean, it was cool, and of course, when we heard Peace of Mind, we're like, yeah, and people are like, oh, I don't know who this guy is. And we're like, we do. But you hadn't heard anything from him since.
Yeah.
Nobody knew anything. I've never heard a Trust song. It's like crazy French avant-garde.
It's metal. Picture AC/DC with Bon Scott if Bon Scott sang in French.
Oh, yeah, weird.
It's really strange. I like the music, but I can't get past the singing in French thing because it sounds like Bon Scott singing in French, and his voice is identical too.
Oh, wow.
But it's just really, it's like AC/DC but sung in French, and it's just they did re-recorded the albums in English, but it's even worse because the accent is so thick.
Oh yeah, that would be bad.
Musically it's fine, but I can't get past the vocals. But yeah, it's weird that he ended up in a French band. It's weird. Oh, Nico jumped around.
Well, it's a great album.
And I think Pat might have done better. He moved to England because I guess he was trying to go for that whole British blues rock thing.
Right.
I think if he moved to the States, it probably would have caught on more. Trying to appeal in England with that music is a bit of an odd move.
Well, yeah. I mean, look at the first line in Life in London.
Yeah.
Right? Life in London is bittersweet. Spray can slogans along the street. Some kind of revolution in the town. Razor blades and safety pins make you look like a clown.
Doesn't sound like he liked London very much.
Well, it's the punk scene's already there.
Yeah.
I mean, rock was not big in London in 77.
No, not really. It was still huge in Canada. He probably didn't even need to leave the country, to be honest. But like, he could have gone to the States if he wanted to. But yeah, he moved to England. It was strange.
Yeah, I mean, but it's 77 is an interesting time because while Kiss was huge, it wouldn't be another year before they'd fall off the map. Aerosmith's at, Draw the Line. They're starting to fall apart.
Mm-hmm.
Ted's big.
Yeah.
Right? AC/DC is working their way up. They got first real big in 79. That's Highway to Hell. But it's really hard to say because, who else was playing stuff like this?
Right.
Because like you said, Rick Derringer, Edgar Winter.
It's very American sounding. England, I always thought was a strange choice.
We're not, I mean, Derringer had Free Ride with with Edgar, with Winter. It was Edgar, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was big. But Kansas is 77. They're at point of no return, right?
Yeah.
Genesis, Trick of the Tail is 76. So they're still in fusion. They're still in prog world.
Yeah.
They haven't gotten real big. They haven't gotten too commercial yet.
Yeah.
ELP is definitely winding down.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, where does somebody like Pat Travers fit in? Because Journey's big, Foreigner's coming.
Yeah.
Styx, 77's Grand Illusion.
Yes.
They're starting a 4-album run of multi-platinum.
Lots of competition.
REO is there.
Yeah.
And Pat kind of doesn't
No.
fit anywhere.
No.
That's true.
But to me, like I said, it's way more similar to where kind of Triumph would start. And it certainly had that Max Webster kind of sound. But Max was no factor here in the States.
They're huge in Canada. Like, they're legendary.
Yeah, it wasn't until Universal Juveniles.
Really? Okay.
Battle Scar was the first track we ever heard from Max
You
Webster.
had Rush on there with them, right?
Yeah, that's the only way. That's the only reason we heard it.
Yeah.
And then if you went out and bought the record, then you realized it's, a really, really great record, top to bottom.
Yeah.
But we had no clue who Max Webster was until all of a sudden they were opening for Rush on the Moving Pictures tour through the U.S.
Yeah.
But that didn't translate to album sales.
Yeah.
Not in the U.S. Nobody went out and ran out and bought Max Webster records.
No.
I appreciated him live. I thought, man, this is a really solid band. Was it Gary McCracken on drums?
Yeah.
Gary was a monster.
And it's funny because Kim Mitchell was like our DJ on the radio. Like, everyone knowing Canada. If you don't know Kim Mitchell in Canada, you're sleeping because he's huge. He's a big name.
Yeah.
And Max Webster still gets played on the radio all the time here. It's funny how certain countries have certain bands that are like that.
I mean, we got April Wine.
Yeah. April Wine, again, but they were bigger in Canada, I think, than in the States.
And we certainly had Bryan Adams.
Yeah. Well, Bryan Adams is huge everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
He broke through, right? Very few Canadian. I mean, Rush is probably Neil Young, but he had to move to the States to do it. So.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's really interesting. It's certainly not very far away.
No. I'm going to go to England. Like, what? Like, it's weird.
Right. And then as you cross ponds,
Yeah.
You look Queen post, maybe Hot Space or somewhere after that, they disappeared in America. Nobody cared anything about Queen.
But
We're just like, no. We
funny you brought up early Triumph because Rock and Roll Machine was the biggest selling album for them in Canada, which is very strange because it didn't sell that much anywhere else. But it was their biggest album in Canada was Rock and Roll Machine. So Patton might have, if he stuck it out and just toured Canada like crazy, he may have became like a huge artist just here. Even if he tried that instead of going all the way over to England, it's just strange to me. It's a strange.
Well, yeah, and then you look at it in reverse. Hendrix would have died a slow death had he stayed here.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Nobody would have cared at all for anything he did here.
Probably not. No.
We were all looking for what was coming out of England at that time. And we had Cream and we had, what else? I mean, Cream was huge.
Yeah.
And when Hendrix was on, you said, oh, Cream? Hendrix is for me.
Yeah.
Well, Procol Harum and,
Procol Harum, yeah.
I mean, a lot of these, and even before that, we had the Moody Blues and,
Yes.
and other bands like that, but they weren't as authentically, Black American blues artists as, what Cream would take and what Zeppelin would borrow,
Yes.
and everything like that. And then of course Jimmy ate that stuff up, and then he goes over there and they're going, hey, we know who Muddy Waters is. We know who Sonny Boy Williamson is. We know who Howlin' Wolf is. And what is this guy doing?
Yes.
And then all of a sudden we're over here going, what? oh, he's British. No, he's American.
Yeah.
And you're like, what?
Yep.
Well, he had British band members, right?
Oh yeah,
Mitch Mitchell was British, and
Yep.
Billy Cox would have been American, though, right?
Well, Noel Redding first. Yeah.
Noel Redding was first, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And, so it was interesting because they had to bring that back to us
Yeah.
because we'd ignored it.
Yeah.
We listened to the acceptable sanitized versions.
Yeah.
And I'm not discrediting Elvis. I absolutely love Elvis. But we were listening to Jerry Lee Lewis, and then all of a sudden Pat Boone was bigger.
Oh yeah.
And we're like, oh no, nobody had a clue who Muddy Waters was, or Bo Diddley, all right? We had no clue until we started to get educated when we're like, oh, this is great. Oh, this is great. And we're like, oh man, this Cheap Trick, California Man, what a great song. It's a cover. It's a blues cover.
Yeah.
Oh, who? By who? Oh, okay. I Ain't Got You. Blues cover. Train Kept a Rolling when we heard Aerosmith.
Oh yeah.
Just start doing the math. Start going back. The Yardbirds influenced the Aerosmith one. The version before inspired the Yardbirds. The version before that inspired that artist. And it goes back to like 1950 something or even earlier.
Yeah.
And then finally it changes to a minor key, and then it moves forward, and you're like, oh, Train Kept a Rolling. Copy of a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy that he's evolved all these years. And you're like, oh, the Aerosmith version of Train Kept a Rolling is the seminal version. And I go, no, that's just one version.
I think it was Fats Domino was the original.
No, I did a thing on it.
Older than that?
It's pretty old.
Oh.
Some artists I didn't even name. They mentioned them in the Zeppelin movie because obviously Train Kept a Rolling was the very first track that the first four members of Led Zeppelin played together in London. That was the first song they played. And they said it was just a room that was just full of a bunch of amps, and they just picked amps, and John Paul Jones, they just turned up really loud, and all of a sudden everybody was just like, something crazy just happened here. And they're like, because they asked Bonham, he said, do you know the song? He goes, no. He says, I'll figure it out.
He's not going to know some song from like the early 1900s or however old it is.
Well, and you're just like, well, I mean, the Yardbirds had already played it.
Yeah.
But, so it's just like you can just, if you could ever be a fly on the wall anytime in your life, what did it sound like in that room when those four guys unleashed?
Yeah.
And Robert just starts wailing over the top of it. And John said, I just wanted to know if Bonham and I could play together.
Wow.
He's like, yeah.
Yeah.
That's not going to be a problem. And like I said, when we were talking about the Cinderella, I love Jimmy and I obviously love John. And Roberts is great. But there's something special about John Paul. And this movie itself, you just start going back and you watch, because they have some good archive, some unreleased stuff. There's a lot of previously released stuff, but the audio's improved and a lot of other stuff. And I'm just sitting there watching John Paul, and I'm going, oh my God.
Much more than just a bass player.
The foundation is so sturdy and so huge. Jimmy could have gone up there with a kazoo, and it would have been the heaviest damn thing you've ever heard in your life. Because underneath it was just, and he always said, he goes, they asked me what my influences are, and he goes, everything influences me. He goes,
what would Kashmir have been without John Paul? Nothing.
It would have just been da-da-da, da-da-da.
It would have been just a riff that Jimmy had, but he didn't know how to turn it around or how to get it back to where it needed to.
Yes.
And how to do the dissonant.
Yes.
To make that crossover.
Yes.
And he said when I was watching It's Gonna Get Loud, that he said it was just him and Bonham, because Bonham was in the studio when Jimmy was playing the riff. And then it's so great, and nobody really pays attention to it. Bonham's playing over the bar line. They're not playing in time. And the Edge says it best, and he says, and with John on drums, menacing. And it is. If you just heard dum da 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 dum da da doosh ga doosh ga doosh, I mean, just what the hell?
Yes.
And then there's so much freaking space. And I was saying about Bonham is we get the down, 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 down. So much space that breathes like crazy, and you just down, 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 down. And you're like, oh my God.
Pete Jones is going to perform a Zeppelin concert tonight.
If you played too busy or anything, you would have destroyed it.
Yeah.
You would have just ruined the feel and the groove and everything. And it's just, that's what makes that track so great. Black Dog doesn't line up.
No, it doesn't.
John Paul and Jimmy are playing in a different signature than Bonham is. And it's only as all those eighth notes pass by that they hit one together, but then it locks in. And you're just like, oh, okay, that just resolved what just happened. And that was just so remarkable. And their influences being so wide, they focus a lot on Jimmy and John Paul doing session stuff. And I really enjoyed seeing that.
Yes.
All the things that they talked about, the tracks that they were on, and how John Paul never turned down anything. He's like, oh, would you like to arrange this? He goes, okay. And he goes, do I know how to arrange? And he's just like, okay, I'll figure it out. His father was in vaudeville. His mom was in vaudeville. He played piano, so he learned it. He was the concert master at the choir at his church at 14.
Wow. Wow.
And listen to the organ at the beginning of Your Time Is Gonna Come, and you're like, okay.
Oh, hell yes.
You're like, I get it.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. That's gorgeous.
I get it.
Absolutely gorgeous. Yes.
Listen to him on No Quarter.
Yes. Yes.
And how beautifully subtle Bonham plays underneath it.
Mm.
And how he makes it just, and that's what Jimmy was saying. He said, I wanted light and shade. I wanted fast and slow. I wanted loud and soft.
The hot sun with the cool wind.
You got to go all over the place. And one of the things that I look at that might be a detriment to Pat Travers here is the album is kind of all over the place. What kind of album really is it? I mean, it's heavy, but you're like, okay. And then you look at the Cinderella one, and for the most part, until you get to that back third, they all start to sound a little bit alike.
Yeah.
They're kind of repetitive, and it's not just his vocal, it's the structure of the song, it's the instrumentation. Here comes the slide with the intro to a slide solo. And the other thing too, and I didn't want to dwell on this on the episode per se, all singers have a signature cadence to, when left to their own devices, how to rhythmically like to connect phrases and words.
Uh-huh.
And Tom has a very specific kind of style. So when you just sit and read his words, you can easily phonetic follow them because it's kind of like a da 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 da. Fill in the syllables, but that's kind of how he sings.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, okay, that's how he interprets melody, which is way different than what Lynott did, right? I was a singing drummer my whole career, and the only songs I would never do live while singing is Thin Lizzy, because he sings over bar lines and he messes up my drumming. It's the only band I can't do it with. Because to do it authentically, I don't want to move his lyrics to the downbeats.
Right.
Because it doesn't sound right.
No.
So I tell the guys in the band, someone else has got to sing this, and they're why I go, because I can't do it. And it's interesting. And when you get certain singers, and it depends on who does the writing, because I'm certainly sure that Tom writes all his own lyrics.
Yeah.
It's his music. And there's a certain kind of singing to Geddy until Neil came along, and then it changed a lot because of the words and the sentiments that Neil was trying to convey, altered through Geddy's filter as a singer to what he's comfortable doing. But they weren't nearly as pigeoned as, early Fly By Night or the first album or that kind of thing. And singers all have those kinds of things. So it was interesting,
Yeah.
and it's just
Note, I
observation.
gotta go soon.
Okay. Yeah. Well, let's.
Want to say
So yeah, it was a fun
was
little rant here at the end. Yeah, it was fun.
pleasure to meet you,
Yes.
Pete.
What, sir?
It was a pleasure to meet
Oh,
you.
no. Pleasure's all mine, sir. And appreciate your awesome input.
I loved your insight on everything.
you're
Didn't
kind.
agree on everything, but that's doesn't mean nothing. I loved your insight on everything. You articulated everything very well, and it was a real pleasure to be on the show with you.
No, I'm humbled. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Sid, as always,
As always.
great brother, and I wish Logan was here with us.
Yeah, his internet's kind of wonky.
The old dictionary. That guy, he's good.
Oh yeah.
He's always got
21 years old with all that knowledge on all this old music is incredible.
Yes.
Um,
For such a young guy, he's got so much knowledge.
Yeah.
So it was
Absolutely.
great. Thank you very much for
Yep.
inviting.
Of course.
And Pete, I hope to see you soon.
I hope to see you as well, sir.
All right, my brother.
All right,
Take care, guys.
Danny.
All right. Bye for now.
Goodbye. So yeah, thanks everybody for watching. And I'd like to thank Pete, Danny, Logan, and Ches for joining us. And yeah, we'll be back next week for Still Climbing and Tangier, 4 wins. So thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you later.
Bye-bye.
See ya.